Hello and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Wednesday, October 4th. I'm Amanda Rabinowitz, host of the Shuffle podcast, Applause Performances, and All Things Considered at Idea Stream Public Media. We are at the Happy Dog in Gordon Square for the City Club's monthly Takes On series, and tonight it's a special forum. The City Club is celebrating 10 years of Happy Dog Takes On the World, a community series where City Club members and friends participate in conversations covering global issues, politics, and more. To mark the milestone tonight, we will discuss the important role independent venues serve for our communities as third spaces, as well as the live entertainment ecosystem. For many small to medium-sized arts venues, the last few years were some of the toughest to navigate. The COVID-19 pandemic, the supply chain struggles, and the contracting of the global economy all played a part, and many venues struggled to stay open or were forced to close down permanently. And ultimately, support from COVID-era stimulus packages saved the industry from mass collapse. Independent venues play an important role as community spaces for social engagement, but they also generate jobs and contribute greatly to economic activity. Joining me on the stage is Cindy Barber, Executive Director of Cleveland Rocks, past, present, and future, and owner of the Beachland Ballroom. And for the first time on the City Club stage, Sean Watterson, co-owner of the Happy Dog.
He gets the big applause.
And president of the Ohio chapter of the Independent Venue Association. If you have a question for our panelists, you can text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. Members and friends of the City Club, please join me in welcoming Cindy and Sean. It's great to have you both here, and Sean, to have you on the stage here at your own venue is pretty special. I want you to start off, we are all pretty well aware of what the last few years have been like. I want you to start off and talk a little bit about where things are now. What is the state of this local ecosystem of independent venues here in Cleveland?
Amanda, thanks for doing this, and thank you for doing the shuffle. It's one of the things that has been a contributing factor to how difficult the environment has been a loss of local media. Specifically coverage of local music. So the fact that the shuffle is out there and shining light on the music that is being made and performed here is invaluable. So thank you for that. The state of the live music ecosystem is split. There was a story that ran on Marketplace maybe 2 weeks ago now that talked about the difference between what people see in Taylor Swift and the fact that her tour has impacted the U.S. economy so much that the Fed is estimating that it's a $5.5 billion impact. And you saw all the stories about the thousands of dollars people were spending on tickets and traveling to the cities that were lucky enough to have those shows. The reality in places like the Happy Dog, in Cleveland and all across the country is that things aren't back to where they were in 2019. And for a long time we thought, well, we're just not out of the woods yet. We were riding it out thinking things were going to come back. I don't think that's the case. I think things have changed permanently when it comes to the community level spaces. And that has implications for democracy too, because one of the most exciting things about spaces like this is that it's full of people, different people, old and young, rich and poor, different socioeconomic statuses, race, gender identity, all of that stuff is what makes spaces like this energized and exciting. And it feels like all of our separate communities have not come back together. So that's a lot of me starting off, but that's post-privilege. So.
Yeah. Cindy, what are you experiencing at the Beachland?
I think younger people are coming out for certain things. But we are still experiencing, post-COVID what we call, it's a whole new term, it's called drops. So you sell, 400 tickets and 25 people bought those tickets and don't show up. That's 25 drops. And then we're reporting that back to the booking agent and the tour. So that's a new statistic. That's all post-COVID. So that's kind of where I think it's what Sean is saying. People have gotten used to staying at home. They've gotten used to different types of entertainment that they had to figure out during COVID, and they're just not out of that habit. So that live entertainment is not as urgent as for some people. Problem with Cleveland is that we are still sort of a small market in some ways, that we don't have the same volume of people that Chicago has, but we probably have almost as many venues and almost as many cultural choices every night. So you're spreading those people that are willing to go out much further along.
Yeah, and inflation, I'm sure, has had a big impact on that too.
Yeah, I see that a lot, that people are choosing what they have to spend. And part of the problem with tours is that it costs more to tour right now. So the bands and the booking agents are pushing you to increase ticket prices, and that's causing some, pushback, resistance.
And I would add too, inflation hits at all sorts of levels. Wages have gone up in this industry, whether it's for the people behind the bar, the people in the kitchen, the performers on the stage, and that needed to happen. But the whole system needs to be sustainable, because the cost of the beer and the hot dogs has gone up as well. And in addition to that, consumption habits are changing. We're seeing a lot more people. It's not legal in Ohio yet, but that doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of people on edibles or vaping and not drinking as much as the business was built on years ago. And so all of that is an adjustment, and it's difficult being especially on the smaller side of that ecosystem to make those changes on the fly. Just fears about consumer reactions on that kind of stuff all play into not wanting to raise prices, because we also know we do make culture and community accessible. I mean, that's part of why we're here and we're not out there producing Taylor Swift things. We do it for a different reason.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna say next. It's just, people say, oh, it's nice to have a music venue in your city, an independent venue, but when we talk about these third spaces, what do they mean to the fabric of your communities?
Well, I can't tell you how many people met at the Beachland and got married.
Yeah, I bet. That's so true. I know that,
But I mean,
yeah,
that's true. But also, if you look at the Waterloo Arts District, it exists because the beachlands there are drawing tens of thousands of people a year to that district. So the restaurants and the galleries that have opened around the beachland, and that's years into the decades of work building that up. And the same thing's true if you look at our community, the Gordon Square Arts District, the Happy Dogs, bringing people out every night, just like Cleveland Public Theater as a performing arts organization is doing something similar. Coventry would be gone if it wasn't for the grog shop. And then you look to Lakewood, whether they're in Birdtown, May Halls and Winchester. These spaces anchor neighborhoods, and it brings people to live in these neighborhoods. It brings people to dine and shop. NIVA, National Independent Venue Association, when we were advocating for relief through the Save Our Stages campaign, we relied on a study out of Chicago that showed for every dollar spent on a ticket or a cover charge to a live event, it generates $12 in economic activity in the immediate surrounding neighborhood that night. And, arguments like that were helpful in convincing both sides of the aisle of the importance of spaces like ours. That got us the money to survive that closure.
And survive is the key word. That money's gone now. It's been spent.
Yeah, I mean, we were very fortunate with the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Program, the federal level programs, employee retention tax credit, those sorts of things. We were also very active advocates on our behalf with the county. And when the county was allocating CARES Act dollars, we were able to work with the traditional arts and culture sector and say, we're struggling too. So instead of all of the money going to arts nonprofits, in that round, a third of the money was dedicated not just to live music venues, but also to the independent musicians and artists who were suffering. Come around to American Rescue Plan Act, and the county increased that percentage to half the money. So, there's a learning process along the way in accepting that what we do is arts and culture when it comes to handing out the dollars, not just celebrating the city.
Yeah, Cindy, how far did that aid that you got during the pandemic go?
Well, it definitely saved our existence. I mean, we kept a very small core staff of 5 people during COVID, and we were able to reopen with the reduced capacity and tried to get people back as fast as we could. And the only reason that we were able to do that really was because of the financial support we got. I mean, I guess for me, the music industry's been changing for a while, and even pre-COVID, the B-String was in trouble. I mean, in 2019, before COVID hit, the costs were going up. It's hard to predict. Running a music venue is legalized gambling, really. You are bidding on shows, and you're trying to get shows into your venue over somebody else in the city or Columbus. Oftentimes right now, we're competing with Columbus or some other local city. And it's all who it can bid the highest. So when you have to bid and you are spending $8,000 for an artist and you only get $5,000 of ticket sales, then the city takes 4% of that for admission tax, and you're paying BMI and ASCAP and CSAC and all of the things that you need to do to put on a show. You're looking at, a $4,000 loss that night. And you can't sustain that for very long. So it's a matter, in my opinion, Cleveland and all of our small venues, we just really need to change the culture here of that live music and live entertainment is valuable as much as our sports teams. And there has to be a city pride in supporting not only, the national acts that are coming through, but our local acts that are really rising stars. And, I grew up in an era where that was happening, right? And people were getting signed to national labels like Michael Stanley and Raspberries and just dozens and dozens of people back in those early 70s and late 60s. And it just feel like that's what I'm trying to do with the nonprofit is to kind of educate people, and the ecosystem just needs to be more higher level focus.
And that's through Cleveland Rock's past, present, and future. I do want to talk a bit about this Cleveland Music Census, just announced this week. Sean, tell us a bit about what is going to be taking place starting this month with this census.
Sure. And so, all of the problems we've been talking about, we need data to talk to people to figure out how to solve these problems. And we haven't had that data since 2011. In 2011, what was then the Community Partnership for Arts and Culture, Assembly for the Arts is sort of its successor organization, did research. It was a report called Remix Cleveland, and we were able to use the information about that, which at the time said that music was close to $1 billion a year industry in Northeast Ohio. We were able to use that to go to the city of Cleveland and advocate for a reduction in admissions taxes. Because without that reduction, we would be looking at an 8% admissions tax. And those taxes are that high because we built the stadiums for the pro sports teams. We're looking at what can we do to return some of the money that's being paid on live music events to our industry. Because the money that's being paid in admissions taxes on sports tickets is going back in multiples in improvements to those stadiums. So, getting off the soapbox. What we're excited about is that we've partnered up with a group out of Austin, Texas called Sound Music Cities. This group was founded by Don Pitts, who was the first person to head up the city of Austin's Office of Music Economy. So he's been in government and he's understood how local government can help with policy to help a local live music ecosystem. What we're going to be doing is at the end of this month, we're going to send a survey out to anybody in the music industry in Northeast Ohio. So not just the venues and the performers, the staff that works at our places, but the production studios, the sound stage and lighting companies, the manufacturing plants, because we have one of the vinyl pressing plants in existence is based here in Cleveland, Got a Groove, to really capture the breadth and depth of what the music industry is here in Cleveland, greater Cleveland. So with that information, we hope to be able to go to county government, city government, and say, look, these are real jobs. This is really important to the life of the city, whether it's the economic life or the cultural life. And this is something that is at risk. And we need interventions to help make this continue to be something valuable. And there's an opportunity. One of the nice things about this study is Cleveland is one of 20 cities undergoing the census project through Sound Music Cities. So we're sharing information with other cities and finding out what's worked in other places. We're also finding out where we have strengths where other people don't. Because I think a lot of times we are not good at understanding how good we are at things and telling the rest of the world that story. So this is a way for us to be able to tell that story to ourselves, understand how it fits with New Orleans, Nashville, Chicago, Louisville, Sacramento, Greensboro, North Carolina, all of these other cities that are part of this music cohort. So we're really excited about it. And the phase we're in right now is we're reaching out to any business, organization, or group that has contact with people who work in the music industry, and we're signing them up as community engagement partners. All that really means is you're gonna help us get this survey out to make sure that we're capturing your people. We wanna capture every community in Cleveland so that we have this depth of knowledge. And for those community engagement partners, we will be able to share this information even before we share it with the public, so they can see what we'll see coming out of the survey.
Yeah, so the goal is to really measure the ecosystem here of our independent venues. Cindy, what are you hoping comes out of this survey?
Well, one of the things that Don Pitts has been we just had a meeting with him. We have a weekly Zoom call with him at 3:00 every Wednesday. So, one of the things kind of pounding into our brains is that this is gonna bring all these people together. We're going to learn how big our community really is. I think that, Chattanooga did something like 1,400 surveys. I think Greensboro, Sacramento did 1,500. Austin did 3,900. So I don't know if we can get there, but I think we have a lot of people in this community that are related to the music industry, and we're really going to be able to measure that. And then we're going to have kind of a communication with these people, and we'll be able to kind of continue that. What we were just talking about today, it's like an ongoing alliance of these music communities. To me, I just got back from Americana and went to the panels down in Nashville. Nashville is like really struggling. They've kind of gone overboard, in my opinion, in that a lot of venues down there are really getting shut down because developers have come in and bought property and kicked them out. So a lot of the historic venues in Nashville are in danger. But I was at a panel where they have started a state Office of Music Economy in Tennessee that just started 5 months ago, kind of following in the footsteps of Texas, which is the leader, which is why Don is so valuable, because he comes from Austin and where this whole movement in some ways started. And in Texas, they just Brendan Anthony is an amazing head of the music office down there, and they just, after a 6-year fight, got a sales tax rebate for real music venues down there to $100,000 a year, which would, if that was something that we could implement in Ohio, that would go a long way to save some of us and keep us going. And Columbus is going to do this music census as well. There's a lot of activity in Cincinnati with Bootsy Collins creating a nonprofit and helping people. So I think that tying those 3 cities together and adding Youngstown and Akron, we could really get some things happening for Ohio in general.
Yeah, we're gonna get to questions in just a moment, but I just wanna take a moment and just say how fortunate we are here that the two of you, and I know that there's many others in the region, who have formed this unified front. And I know it started before COVID, but really during COVID is when you all have come together and really all fought this fight together. And I think that that's really gone such a long way.
I would say, one thing that I think is unique to Cleveland, and part of why we are good at collaborating, is the majority of venues in Cleveland are women-owned. So you've got Cindy at the Beachland, you've got Kathy Blackman at the Grog Shop, Rose Sappos, who used to book here at the Little Rose, you got Emma at No Class, you've got Ray Gentry at the Foundry. If you go down to Akron, you've got Jill Bacon Madden at Jill's Music Room. Really, the climate here, the venues here are mostly majority women run, and the women are smarter. We're actually able to work together where some other cities, there's a little bit more competitive edge to it as opposed to collaborative. So I think Cleveland has advantages on a lot of levels, and that's one of them.
Cindy, what have you seen from this partnership that you all have?
Well, I think that women want to take care of things, want to take care of people. We kind of baby musicians. I think that we really, that admission tax fight really hit me hard. Peabody's, the Beachland, Pickwick and Frolic, we all got just hit because they brought in a consultant to decide where things were getting missed and bring more money into the city of Cleveland. And Henry LeCounty called me up and said, Cindy, we're gonna fight this. And we had meetings, every week at the Agora with Henry, and he brought all of us together, and it was just inspirational.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun just because it's all a bunch of venue owners, so the meeting never started on time. So I showed up on time because Hank Wakani has incredible stories. And so you would be able to hear these amazing stories of this icon who ran venues in Russia. There was an Agora in St. Petersburg. He produced David Copperfield shows in Kyiv and Moscow. Just these insane stories, which is the fun part of the business.
And I think that in some ways that's our legacy, because, which is why it's so important to me, because I'm old enough to have lived through it. You know, that we were breaking records up here. We were, you know, there were people who were working in the industry behind the scenes all over the country in very important positions, and they came from Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, that's why we have rock hall here. And that story doesn't get told often enough.
And the results from the Cleveland Music Census in the spring?
I think the census will probably be open through, it'll probably close a little bit before the holidays, and then so we'll take some time to compile that information, get the data, get some recommendations coming out of that. So I would look to February, March, which means April, in terms of data coming out of that. That said, there's going to be valuable things coming through the process. I mean, part of this too is, you know, we've got the Rock Hall here in the room. They are embarking on a massive, awesome expansion, $135 million expansion, locking Cleveland in as a Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city. But everything else needs to be there, and there's so much we can do, and we have been doing with the Rock Hall. And I think, you know, one of the things that we've been doing just recently is getting the Rock Hall's help, the IT department in the Rock Hall, helping get our shows at the venues in Cleveland ultimately listed in Destination Cleveland's calendar, so that we can really market what we do here to people from outside of here. And that kind of stuff happens when you've got a partner like the Rock Hall that's willing to step in and provide resources and be supportive. So that's something we have that nobody else has.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I do want to start shifting to our question, our audience Q&A portion. So for our live stream audience, for those just joining us, I'm Amanda Rabinowitz, host of the Shuffle podcast, Applause Performances and All Things Considered at Idea Stream Public Media. And joining us for a panel discussion on the important roles of independent venues for our communities and live entertainment ecosystem is Cindy Barber, Executive Director of Cleveland Rocks, past, present, and future, and owner of the Beachland Ballroom, and Sean Watterson, co-owner of the Happy Dog, President of the Ohio chapter of the Independent Venue Association. If you are here with us in person, you can line up next to the microphone to my left and ask your question. And if you're joining us virtually or are perhaps a little microphone shy, that's okay. You can text them to 330-541-5794. Again, 330-541-5794. And Cynthia with the City Club will try to work them in. So we welcome your questions.
We're going to start with a text question. The first one we have is, we see venues like Nighttown close up shop, and suddenly people realize what they've lost. How can we get people to pay attention before it's too late for iconic venues like the Happy Dog, Grog Shop, and Beachland Ballroom before it's too late and they close?
That's a great question.
We're trying our hardest to create solutions. I think, we've been talking about a music venue trust. The Beachland owns its own building, some other venues do not. And one of the things that we're talking about is, you know, how do we do that? I mean, I think that people need to not take venues for granted. That if you want to see music in the future, think about their situation, just ponder and look around. You know that there's, like, every time you go to an outdoor festival, go pay, buy a ticket and go to an indoor space.
Yeah, I know, Cindy brought up the Music Venue Trust, and I've been a big advocate of that. We brought Mark David, who heads up, he's really the leader in this space. He runs the UK Music Venue Trust, because all across the United Kingdom, they are losing grassroots music venues because property values have spiked over there, and it's a low margin business anyway. So space rooms that don't own their building are getting pushed out, or even if they do own, are getting priced out because of increases in property taxes. So he came up with this concept of the UK Music Venue Trust, and actually yesterday they purchased their first building, a coffee club cafe. And that movement is beginning to catch hold here in the US, but it's only catching hold in the cities that have already priced music out. So Seattle, San Francisco, and Austin, Texas are the places that have created cultural land trusts, not specific to music venues. And I think in a place like Cleveland, it's not just music venues that are at risk. It's cultural spaces. And it's
Sokolowski.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, what makes Cleveland Cleveland, our cultural identity, that stuff's at risk because that's not necessarily the highest profit margin stuff out there. Where Cleveland is ahead, or can be ahead, is our land is still relatively cheap compared to Seattle, San Francisco, and Austin. Seattle's raised $17 million in their cultural land trust, and they have only been able to preserve 4 spaces. And I say spaces because it's not buildings, 4 spaces. $17 million in Cleveland, Ohio would cover buying all of the buildings that all of the music venues you know are in. But that's looking forward. Like, if we're planning for economic development and all of the grand plans we have for riverfront, lakefront development, but then also all the work that we're doing through the Cleveland Talent Alliance to try and get people to relocate their businesses here or grow businesses here. You know, if that works, that's just that much more pressure on all of this stuff. So let's raise that money now and secure those things now, so we're not in a situation like Nashville that's lost 6 independent venues since COVID because of commercial redevelopment.
Yeah, and I love that there's all those different ideas that, you know, it's not just writing a check. There are these different strategies that you can come up with that can go a long way. So I think that's interesting. Do we have another question, Cynthia?
Yes. We saw the city appoint Rhonda K. Brown as a senior strategist for arts, culture, and a creative economy. Are independent venues supported with this appointment?
Well, we've been very vocal and involved in the political process, and the Bibb administration has been responsive. So when we heard this position was being created, we approached Director Joyce Wong at the city, who was responsible for doing the hiring, and we said, throughout this process, this person is going to serve as an art strategist, not just for nonprofits, but for-profit arts-based businesses and for individual artists in the community. And so we actually got onto the committee to interview the finalist candidates. And so I was fortunate I was able to interview Rhonda through the process. in one of the first meetings we made sure she had on her calendar when she came to Cleveland was to meet with the independent venues. So we're supportive. The language around that position is about the creative economy. It's not just the arts and culture strategist, it's arts, culture, and the creative economy. And we're just really like a broken record when it comes to making sure that when people talk about arts and culture, they understand that, as Jeremy Johnson at Assembly for the Arts now says, it's a three-legged stool. It's the arts nonprofits, but it's the arts-based businesses, and it's the individual artists that make up this ecosystem. So we're supportive. We think she's doing a great job. She's been very supportive in her outreach to the venues.
She's really gone out of her way to go out and visit neighborhoods and explore. I really applaud her efforts so far.
Next question is, where does public funding come into play? Things like Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, or additional support with policy from the State House?
Well, to me, I'm going to try to start reaching out to the State House. I mean, I have talked to several state reps about, and Kent Smith, when he was a state rep, helped get some legislation into the State House, much like the Film Commission, where there's tax credits. So one of the things that Louisiana does, Georgia, is create tax credits for people who might invest in producing a record or building a studio or a sound stage or something like that. So if we could get some private dollars and then get some support for that, that's where I'm headed with some of the things that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we've seen the success of the film tax credit. What we also have here is we have one of the largest theater complexes outside of New York. And I know the theater community has looked at theatrical tax credits for production. So the traveling companies at Broadway shows. And I think if those three segments of the commercial arts can coalesce and really sell the concept of film, theater, and music tax credits at the state level, that would be helpful. At the state level, I also look at the fact that right now there are only 2 states that have a state level Office of Music Economy. Texas, which is the leader, and Tennessee is, as Cindy said, which is just 5 months into having their office. We don't have to be one of the last states to do it. But before we can have a state level office, Austin had to have a city level office or a county level office before they could grow that to a state level office. So unless we have a voice in government like that, it's going to be harder to access funding. We saw with the state level arts funding that went through the Ohio Arts Council, that went entirely to the nonprofit community. That is a long conversation, and it's one that we're having in Cleveland, which is going to be my transition to Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. So Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, we've had the cigarette tax for 20 years. We will be asked to go to the polls next year to renew and expand that tax to support arts and culture. I've been very vocal, especially over the last 10 years, about that funding, more of that funding going to individual artists, because we've seen the level that goes to individual artists decline from 5% to 3% to under 2% during COVID. I don't think that's the right allocation. We've seen over 20 years, that 20 years ago, we didn't take equity into account when we were making decisions on how to allocate funds. We learned that equity is important, and that's influenced our decision making. During COVID, we learned that spaces like ours who employ artists. We pay over 2,000 musicians a year to play on this stage, are as at risk and as in need of support as institutions that do the exact same thing we do with a different tax status. And so I have been aggressive in saying that before we go to the ballot to ask for a renewal for that tax, we need a public conversation about how the money is going to be allocated. And we'll try and make our case that we are deserving of some of those funds. The county has already said, we thought you were deserving when we were handing out Arts CARES Act funding and Arts American Rescue Plan Act funding, so it's not unprecedented. But I think voters should know how that money is going to be allocated before we're asked to renew that tax. And I'm talking venues, but individual artists and musicians need to see more of those funds as that moves forward too.
All right, we got another question. How is the music scene changing in terms of artists and musicians? Garage bands aren't as common as they used to be. So what efforts are underway to increase music education and support smaller bands, and will the census track that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, the census would hopefully track that as long as everybody fills out the census, and encourage your friends to do that and make your voice heard, because we want to meet those people. I think there are amazing young bands coming up right now. I see some energy with like, and I have to give School of Rock a lot of credit, because we have one of the most amazing franchises here in the city, and they're training kids to play real instruments and rock and roll, and then they're making bands, and I couldn't be happier about that. And they're writing songs, and they're asking, there's asking to play for nothing. They just want to get going, and we need more support for that. Somehow I'm trying to do that through the nonprofit. We've got an incubator program that we just started, where we're giving loans of $2,000 to individuals to do a recording, go out on tour, market their product, and we're doing workshops all the time, every month, on how to sign up for royalties, how to be in your own business, how to make sure that you're having contracts ahead of time, in case you might be able to sell one of your songs to a film or a TV commercial. We're trying to build all of those knowledge bases, and hopefully these young artists will learn early.
Yeah, and that's Cleveland Rock's past, present, and future. I would recommend everybody go to the website and read more about that.
Yeah, and I would say, the work that Cindy's doing, especially on the music incubator side of Cleveland Rocks, now that we're part of National Independent Venue Association, we've got insight into what's happening around the country. There are cities that are making serious investments in those things, and they're philanthropic investments. I'm now business partners through a national independent venue collaborative called Detour with folks in Wichita, Kansas, and they launched their own music incubator with support of one of the Koch brothers' kids, and it's funded. The initial funding was $1 million. They are providing not just recording support and training and education to the bands that are going through their incubators. They're providing tour support. Because they have that kind of level of funding, they're able to acquire vans that they can lend out to the bands to export Wichita music to other cities. Wichita is not the only city that's doing that, but that's happening in secondary and tertiary market cities like the Clevelands and the Wichitas. So that needs support. I would also say there's something we do here that no other city does, and we're crossing our fingers that it's coming back. It's called the Lottery League.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Cleveland has something called the Lottery League that brings 150 musicians together to form new bands. The software is set up that you can't join a band with anybody you've been in a band with before. So it creates, and instead of being like a 48-hour film festival where yeah, they got time to do one song and perform it, we in Cleveland, typically it happens during the worst weather months, and it's several months where these bands have time to write 3 songs, practice together, and perform the big show in the spring. And every time that's happened, that's created these connections and intersections of people who hadn't necessarily played together before. And there are always bands that stay together coming out of that. But in addition to that, there are people who play together, and it may not be in their Lottery League band, but that it goes on to create new energy. And so, fingers crossed, we're really hoping Lottery League comes
Gotta
back.
bring back the lottery, yeah.
I want to close it out with a final question, and this one is actually for me. With 10 years of Happy Dog under your belt, this is for Sean. What is your favorite moment or conversation that you've heard right here between these walls? I'll put you on the spot.
Well, so there isn't a favorite, but there are a couple that really jump out in my mind. Some for good reasons, some for not as good reasons. We did a forum on the war in Yemen, which I didn't know anything about, and it was incredible. We were able to work with the Northeast Ohio Consortium of Middle East Studies. These are political science professors at universities all across Northeast Ohio to get some international experts on what's going on in the Middle East. So a lot of those were really high energy, high intelligence conversations and things you don't get in the general public. There was the time when we decided we were going to cover the new president's foreign policy inbox. This was in 2016. We didn't know how the election would turn out. C-SPAN came and covered that. And you can look it up on YouTube. We're probably the only hot dog bar in the country with a C-SPAN YouTube clip. So that one was great. There were others, like the conversation we had about domestic terrorism, where we had the local head of Black Lives Matter, the local head of the FBI office, Anti-Defamation League, and a few others on that panel. And I remember just standing outside, hoping nobody would drive into the front of the Happy Dog. There was the conversation we had about Kashmir, which we didn't think far enough in advance to think we would have a bar full of Pakistani Muslims and Indian Hindu nationalists. But it was a great conversation. It was very animated. What I really love about the ones that stick out in my mind is we were covering interesting topics where there were differences of opinion. And it brought people from different perspectives into the room. And it led to critical thinking. And we had people on both sides of issues in the room asking questions, being respectful of each other, but having very, very firm points of view. So for me, I miss those days some, because I don't feel as a society that we're as able to have those experiences where we got people with different opinions in the same room. And I think we lose something. And I do want to say thank you to the city. Like the Lottery League, no other city's got something like this. And it's because of the commitment to the city.
Well, I think, examples that you just listed, Sean, and something like tonight is a great reason and a great reminder of why these spaces matter so much. So thank you, Cindy and Sean, for joining us at the Happy Dog. Great conversation, and thank you so much.
I think you got it.
What's that? Oh, yeah, I will. Don't worry, don't worry. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to generous support from individuals like you. You can learn more about how to become a guardian of free speech and make a donation today at cityclub.org. Tonight's forum is also part of the City Club in the Community Series sponsored by Bank of America. Be sure to join the City Club this Friday, October 6th. They'll be broadcasting live on 89.7 WKSU at the Futureland Conference. Kent State University alum and film director Blitz Bazawule will talk about his upcoming movie, the musical Reimagining the Color Purple, produced by Oprah, Steven Spielberg, and Quincy Jones. Thank you, members and friends of the City Club, both here, streaming live. I'm Amanda Rabinowitz. This forum is now adjourned.